I'll tell you probably who's not committing a mass shooting, and it's a dude with like friends that he can talk to who's getting laid on a regular basis, who has an okay job. Like that dude is shooting no one. Okay, maybe in self-defense, but he's not shooting.
Yeah, but like, no, like.
But when you take away, listen, when you take away the friends, okay, the people that actually talk to and express yourself and be frustrated amongst, when you take away the relationship.
Watch and or listen while we tackle tough and sometimes taboo topics filmed live over drinks. This platform allows us to articulate our thoughts and challenge our beliefs. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Welcome to SipTalk, episode 283. My name is Justin DiGiulio, joined by James, the Bartender, Boswell, Philosopher, Philanderer, Philatelist, Phlebotomist,
Philanderer?
Ned Flanders' next door neighbor, actually. How's it hanging down there in not so sunny South Carolina, James?
Standard week. Just dealing with various stupids through the job.
Well, at least you're not a teacher anymore, so that would be maybe more pronounced in that role.
You see, there's a big difference because when you're a teacher, there isn't the expectation that like the students know what they're doing. The whole point is that they don't know what they're doing and you're there to teach them. In my job, I'm dealing with professionals who struggle to communicate basic concepts often.
Yeah, I see that a lot in that professional field, especially in real estate. However, let me just talk about today's topic so we get that out there in the beginning of the conversation. Today, we are talking about the masculinity crisis. We've also opened the phone line, 212-239-1839. So if you are watching this and we're live, you can call that number and weigh in on the current masculinity crisis, what it is, if it's really a crisis, if it's in crisis, what you think about masculinity, toxic masculinity, et cetera, et cetera. We'd love your opinion. That number is on the live stream for YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and I think Instagram. So feel free to call in if you want to share your opinions on that. Speaking of just bad communication skills, we had an agent cancel an inspection on us today. The inspection, I think, was 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. But he canceled at 4:35 a.m. And our agent almost missed it because who the fuck sends messages at 4:35 in the morning?
How was this canceled? By text message?
By text, yeah.
Okay, because I was going to say with email, like most emails have schedule send features, which are great.
Yeah.
I love the scheduled send feature.
Yeah, I sent a lot of like midnight or later messages with a schedule send to go out at like 8:15 in the morning or something.
Same thing here. It's like with my accounting work, a lot of the work I do is around midnight, and I'm just like, you know what? I don't want them to see that I'm working at midnight. I'll just have it send out the next morning when it looks like I'll be asleep, but it looks like I'm a normal person.
Yeah, and also you work across a couple of time zones too, so I'm sure that comes in handy in the other role too.
Well, yeah, because like my main job is on the West Coast, so like, but we have offices on the East Coast, so I'll see stuff that comes in at like 8:30 in the morning, which is 5:30 in the morning West Coast.
Yeah, interesting. So what am I missing? We got a comment on Instagram. I think I don't know if Rosh is feeding these real time. We got Rosh Caleb in the flanks feeding us your comments from Instagram. So we want to thank Rosh Caleb for being present and feeding us the garbage that you sling at us.
Yeah.
Sometimes. All
right. Hopefully this is less garbage filled cast than usual. Although like there are some garbage points to be made by like not by you or me, but like by other people out there hypothesizing on it. Because we're talking about the supposed crisis in masculinity that's getting a lot of play right now, and I think there's some parts to it that are true, and then there are other parts that are exaggerated.
Yeah, I think we can dive right into it. I want to remind everybody that in the third half of today's episode, we're going to have a new bar trivia question, and about halfway through the episode, we're going to answer last week's bar trivia question, which I'm excited to get to. So just stay tuned for the bar trivia questions. You're going to like them this week. Let's get into masculinity and a potential crisis on hand. This is your idea for a topic, so I'll let you. You've actually come up with a lot of the topics lately.
Yeah.
So that's
pulling my considerable weight.
Kudos to you. That's good stuff. All right, what do you got?
Well, I don't know, maybe it's just my YouTube algorithm is all screwy, but like what like no, because like I listen to a lot of political stuff. I listen to a lot of philosophy stuff, and for some reason, at the intersection of that is like, have you ever gone to the channel Big Think on
Yes,
YouTube?
I know, big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so like there's a bunch of videos on there about like the crisis in masculinity. I'm like, you know what, this is kind of interesting because like to some degree, as a man, I feel it, and and another degree, like you can look at the last election where like especially young men broke much harder for Trump than was expected. And part of that was because the Trump campaign really tried to message we're the masculine candidate, which I guess is easy when the opponent is a woman, but
No, but I think, to a degree, it feels like men have been slighted, and if you can amplify that and recruit them,
well,
then that's
and I think that it was tapping into something very real that a lot of men feel like they are not getting a fair shake in today's society. And that's where I said like some parts of this I agree with and some I don't. Like but you can look at like there's a whole bunch of statistics that show that men at least in youth are struggling where like I'm skipping ahead here, but like if you look at just early education, so boys are about 1.5 times more likely to have to repeat kindergarten than girls. By the end of third grade,
the
on
idea.
average,
Hold on, the idea of having to repeat kindergarten, to me sounds pretty crazy. That
sure, like
that just means that you're pretty crazy.
uh,
And I think some of that has to do with home life also. But if we're seeing a trend that it's more boys than girls, and that definitely says something about.
yeah, like boys are 1.5 times more likely to have to repeat kindergarten, which like we could talk about that more, but I like by the end of third grade, boys are about a half grade level behind in reading level. And when it comes to like high school, like 46% of girls take AP classes versus only 38% of boys. So like
It's
something's
closer than
happening
I
in the
thought. It's closer
it,
than I thought, but
it is, but like there's clear statistical disparities in educational achievement between boys and girls in school, and that didn't used to be the case. So something's going on there.
well, let's
You
let's talk about some other symptoms that we're seeing, some other just changes that we're seeing in the roles of men and boys, I guess. But let's run through a handful of symptoms because we got a bunch
well,
on the list here, and you skipped
there's
ahead, but that's kind of where we are.
yeah, well, there's the whole male isolation thing of like
This
men are
seems
lonely, men are having a harder time finding somebody to date. Men are less likely to have like close friends or like social groups than they did in the past. And so you've got a lot of men that don't really do much, and that's not healthy.
Well, no, it's not healthy just on an individualistic level, but then also when it comes to like mass shootings and things like that, um, I'll tell you probably who's not committing a mass shooting, and it's a dude with like friends that he can talk to who's getting laid on a regular basis who has an okay job. Like that dude is shooting no one. Okay, maybe in self defense, but he's not shooting
Yeah, but like
anybody.
no, like
But when you take away
all
but
the
when you
mass
take
shooters.
away but listen, when you take away the friends, okay, the people that actually talk to and express yourself and be frustrated amongst, when you take away the relationships, which we do, are one of our last 2 or 3 episodes was literally about, the population, potential population collapse because people are just having less sex and having fewer relationships, okay, so relationships are disappearing. Then you take away the job, which we're looking at AI threatening the few jobs and the shit paying jobs that are out there. So now you have a recipe for more mass shooters.
Well, and I would also say like the trend was already in place before COVID, but COVID really put it into overdrive of a lot of places that people used to go to socialize, like those places disappeared because they just went out of business in COVID and nothing really came to take their place. And so
Oh,
like
you
a
know what I
lot of
heard of? You know what? Actually, let's just talk about that because I heard a new definition for what you're talking about, and I think it's called like your third space.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it is like your home would be your first space, your work would be your second space, and the third space is the place that you kind of can go to regularly. That ideally is a low or zero cost place that you can just go for that social aspect of life.
So you see this much more often in Europe, and I think about um like even on my last trip to Spain, right? So people tend to not have as large houses or apartments, and so they don't get to have as many things in their place as we Americans do. And so that means that like their houses are just not as good for having people over. They're more a place to just like eat and sleep. And so where do they go for their entertainment? To a local bar or some kind of like people
Oh,
go
way
out
more.
and
Yeah, way more European than in America. I'm like, oh wait, there's a zip lining place. Let me just get a zip line. Oh, there's a trampoline place. Let me just get a trampoline. There's
right.
this or that. Oh, dart. Instead of going to play darts, let me get a dartboard. Pool. I'll get a pool table. In Europe, people do travel outside of the house, and in cities, obviously,
Well,
in places
yeah, I
like
mean,
New
it
York.
also is it's a population density thing where like Europe, at least in Spain, what I've seen is like, sure, you have people that live in rural areas, but like, if you go to a city in Spain, like the concept of like suburbs doesn't really exist in Europe like it does here. Where like you've got a city center that's pretty dense, it gradually gets less dense as you get further away, but then like it goes from like pretty dense to like nothing. Whereas in like the United States, that the density curve is much smoother where like it goes from dense city to like less dense city to suburbs to less dense suburbs to
Well, I
even
mean,
less
you
dense
can
suburbs.
literally look at that where we're from, where you have Albany and then Troy and then Brunswick and then Cropseyville and then Grafton, right? Like,
Right.
it's
But
exactly what you're
like
talking
you can
about.
look at like Atlanta as a good example of that too.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
there's lots of places across, but in Europe, you don't see that as much.
yeah, it's everything's much more densely around the city, and also the public transportation is better, so it's a lot easier to get around the city without having to spend money or deal with traffic. And so yeah, like when I've been to Bilbao when I was in Tenerife, like people are out on the streets and out in bars, and they're probably not spending more than like $3 to $10 a night, if that, at the bar because it's just a place to hang out. And also, the bars there don't charge the kind of prices that you see bars in the United States charge. Because if everybody's going out to your bar 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week, like you're not gouging them because you want them to come back. And so, like, you can get a beer for $1.50. You can get a snack for $3, and like, but since you're there every day, the bar still does fine.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's move
All
on.
right, so
So
yeah,
we get
third places. Like it's like in the United States, we don't do a good job with third places, and COVID devastated them. And so it took a society that was already trending more insular and just accelerated that process. And you got a lot of people that just don't really go out unless they have to, and I'm one of them.
well, that's you get this male, you got a lot on the male isolation thing here. I go, oh, all right. You, you laid into that later. I want to get there, but I want to hit some more symptoms before we revisit male isolation.
Well,
Just about kind of the questioning of the value of being a man. So as a
well,
masculine man, what does a man in 2025, that's strong and stoic, and takes risks and is aggressive, what does he bring to the table? Like, what's the value of that in 2025? Because I think it's a greatly diminished value when you look at what those things bring to the table 15 years ago, 30 years ago, 45
well,
years ago.
I can look at like some of the kind of traditional expectations for how men should behave in society and say that's something that I would choose to do because I value those things. But I can also look at that as saying like, hey, kind of subtly enforcing these as expectations on people might not be healthy on a societal level.
Sure, but I think we're seeing a lot of masculinity erode from our everyday society. And the one example that I had in here, it was funny because I was kind of running some talking points through ChatGPT to see if I was missing anything, and it didn't add this, but I thought of it. And you know that it's pretty public knowledge that the next James Bond was almost Idris Elba, which that would have been cool, but also Idris Elba is black, and James Bond has been a traditionally white character. Um, Not that race has been a big issue in his character at all. It's just he's been portrayed as a white man.
Yeah, I
But
think Idris Elba could have pulled it
I
off.
think so too. But the next James Bond was almost a woman. And in the last movie, I think it was the last movie, they kind of played with that to see how the public took it. And 007 in the movie was, oh, damn, I can't remember her name. But it was a woman. and a woman of color, and they get a lot of pushback.
Making James Bond a woman doesn't make a lot of sense. In the same way that making if you're gonna do Superman, you don't cast a woman for the role because it's Superman. You have Superwoman. You can make a movie about her.
We got a caller here.
All right.
This is SipTalk.
Hi, SipTalk. I would love to say my opinion regarding actually masculinity and the situation in 21st century regarding that.
Okay, yeah. Who are we speaking with? I'll let you introduce yourself here. I know who we're talking to because I recognize the number, but go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Stanislav, and Justin, it's a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to speaking with you tonight. And yeah, I would love to say just a few sentences and my opinion on that. First of all, do we have the problem with masculinity in 21st century? Absolutely yes. Why? Because men, they have a lack of direction. And I think that what we need to embrace as a man in 21st century is look back in our history and embrace the same values what men used to have back then. And I'm talking about values such as discipline, presence, integrity, responsibility, honor, service, humility, brotherhood, provision. Those values, they were the most important things, what actually was moving the person who actually changed the world back then. Every man back then, they had to provide for family. They didn't have choice to socialize or no, because it wasn't an issue. It's issue in 21st century because you've got the phones.
But also, I got to cut you off just because I'm curious how you're going to respond to this. And not that I disagree with you. I think I probably agree with almost everything you're saying. But remember that the playing field is changing. So it's no longer just on men. Women are doing these things now as well. And somebody could argue that men didn't allow women to do so back then, so that women are capable of doing some of the things that you mentioned. And then I guess the question is, can men do it better? Or do we need them to do better? Do we need a strong, able-bodied man, or is strength really something of the past? Now we have machines and we have a lot more technology.
I'm making some notes on what he's saying. So
go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, what I would love to say that I have such a respect to women in 21st century from the perspective that many of those women, they are actually tougher and has more strength than some men. I think that those comfortable times, they born the big generation. If you will look in early 20th century and the men who used to be back then, they had different perspectives of the life because they had to survive and make sure that their family survive as well. So it wasn't something that like some percentage of the men didn't scare to take responsibility and provide for the family because they didn't have a choice, basically. And I'm not saying, or I'm not trying to say that back then it was better. Absolutely not. Now, of course, we live in the most comfortable era in the world, and overall, we have great level and quality of life. But also because of that, we as a man, and because of our biological perspectives, we are not that concentrated and focused on our tasks because more distractions involved in our life.
All right, I'm gonna cut you off in there because we got a lot we got to cover in this episode. I appreciate the call in. We're going to continue to talk about what you just mentioned. Stanislav, thank you for giving us a call. We'll talk soon. I appreciate that. Adios. All right, see you.
All right, so I made some notes on some of the points that he
also what the one thing that he said, just before I forget it, because I wasn't making any notes, is that he mentioned for survival. So for many generations, men were responsible for survival, right? They were strong. They defended the family. They brought home a lot of the food. They hunted, and not in every culture.
Yeah, but we're going like to make that claim, you got to go way back.
You got to go exactly, and but that's the point. Is that now we're not fighting for survival. We're not fighting for survival.
Most of us are not. No.
Most of us, no. All right. So what are your notes? Because I want to get to this male isolation, and
He
then
actually
we got a
mentioned
lot more to
something
cover.
that I somehow omitted in like my original sketching out of this, but I think is actually a really good point. And I don't think this is male specific, but it's probably more a problem for men than it is for women. And he said men feel a lack of direction.
Yes.
And I think that's a big part of the problem is that, and the reasons for this are really, really broad because you can look at like on a societal level, like men don't really know what they're supposed to be doing because men and women can now kind of work the same roles and everything. Like the freedom of choice leads to like a paralysis of choice where like there's too many things that we can do and we're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. There's also like because women don't depend on men for anything today, like men now have to justify like their existence to women in terms of getting women to want to be a part of their lives. They have to offer something more than just like, hey, I like you don't have to work and I'll pay for us both. Like most women
That's
I
almost
know are like, yeah,
impossible
I
these
would
days.
rather work and be independent so I'm not reliant on you. And that takes away a sense of direction for men because like you used to be able to say like I need to be able to provide for my wife and potentially my kids. And also with like and I'm one of these people, like with the less of an emphasis on like child having a child being a life goal, like a lot of men are like, all right, so women don't really need me for anything. And I don't really want to have kids, so like women don't even need me for that, and I don't need me for that. And so it's like I also see that like economically, I'm working, but I'm not really getting
Oh, that's
ahead.
I mean,
I'm
the
just
thing is,
barely scraping by. So like, what am I doing any of this for?
well,
Why?
providing. He also mentioned providing, and what are men providing that can't be provided
Well,
by a woman?
that brings me to another question I wrote down while I was listening to Stanislav, which is, should men still even be responsible for the provider role?
Well, I don't necessarily think that's always the case. In many cases, it was. Let's hit this male isolation because you got a lot on this male isolation. I just want you to hit it rapid fire here.
All right. So when you actually look at the statistics in terms of like social connections, that there's not a huge gap between men and women, but for some reason, men are getting a lot of the attention right now, and that's probably just because like when you look at the most negative consequences of isolation, and that would be like suicide, profound mental illness, or doing things like mass shootings. That's predominantly men that are doing that.
Sure, and just inherently, women are more social.
Yes. And so the ones who are suffering the most from this isolation do appear to be men, um, because if you think about like the bell curve, like a lot of the men are at the tails of that, whereas like women are more towards the middle, and so the worst results are being felt by men. And so like when it comes to male isolation, you can look at like the societal expectation that men shouldn't express emotion and that they need to always kind of be suppressed and reserved, right? Which to some degree, like I mean, I'm very much like this, but like that also makes it so that like men have a real hard time forming connection because in order to form connection you need to make yourself vulnerable, and that is still somewhat shunned in society if a man makes himself vulnerable to anybody. And so men have a harder time forming any kind of close relationship because they are so self regulated by societal expectations. You can look at, in terms of seeking help, men who are struggling with like emotional or psychological problems are a lot less likely to seek professional help. In 2019, 24.7% of women received some kind of mental health treatment compared to only 13.4% of men. 11%, like 12% of women went to therapy versus only about 7% for men. In terms of taking psychological medication of some sort, 20.6% of women, 10.7% of men.
So roughly
So,
half, yeah, half
yeah,
half the men, yeah.
and part of the reason for this, and like what kind of got me started on this is a friend of mine was doing couples therapy and was complaining about how terrible it was, and he always complained about, like, he always called that having to go to the dentist. And then when he actually had to go to the dentist, he's like, I'd rather be going to the dentist. Like, I'd rather be going to the real dentist than going to the therapy dentist because this sucks. And I stumbled on a video. Have you ever seen the channel Healthy Gamer GG?
No,
It's
I don't watch people playing video games on the internet.
No. This is a therapist, like a male therapist that does that like tailors a lot of his stuff to young men that play video games. And
Okay.
and he made a video
Probably a group
called,
of men who really need help.
well, yes,
Yeah, no, yeah.
he's doing good work.
I'm sure he is. Yeah.
But he made a video titled "Why Therapy Sucks for Men."
I think you've told me. I think you've told me about this one.
I might have sent it to you.
I think you've told me, but so tell me if I'm wrong on this. Typically, when men go to therapy, it's very stressful for them, and when women go to therapy, it's the exact opposite. It's very relieving for them. They come out.
Now,
feeling
why would
good.
that be?
Well, because men just don't like to share their feelings. So, so I've actually gotten a few of these different like card games or relationship games where you get to like talk about yourself, and usually I get like into playing it. Like the first card, I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to do it. By the second card, I'm like, let's just end the game. I don't like this at all. Like, I don't want to talk about any of this shit.
Yeah, so we agree about that. Like, it's just very uncomfortable. Here's another reason why. In the whole like therapy and psychology industry, only like 25 to 30% of the people that work in it are men. So if you're a male looking for someone to help, chances are you're going to be like finding a female therapist, and like that you just can't relate. And
that's a really good point. I want you to move on to the online dating. But before you do that, I want to remind everybody who's listening to us live on YouTube, Twitch.
Can we please share this picture?
X. I don't know if we can. I'll see if I can send it to me. And I'll see if we can put it in the post edited version, the YouTube version. Facebook, YouTube, whatever else. You're watching us live. You can call 212-239.
Can I just screen share it?
Can you let me finish the number? So if somebody is listening to it, yeah, try to screenshot it. 212-239-1839. If you're listening and you want to levy your opinion on that, by all means, call in. We'd love to hear your opinion. 212-239-1839. The number's on the screen also if you're watching live anywhere but TikTok. So if you're watching on another platform outside of TikTok, are you sharing it?
Yeah.
I don't see it here. Do I have to add to the scene? Here we go.
Okay, there we go. We got it.
All right. So you got, can you zoom in on that? Can you make that bigger on your screen? I loved it. I think this is old data. We need something updated from this.
Yeah, but it's still got to be like close enough. Here,
okay. All right. So I'll let you describe it because it's a great chart. We got two bar charts.
So this
how
is
men
data,
rate women
this
and
is
how
old
women
data
rate men.
from okcupid.com back when they shared a lot of their metrics. And you've got two graphs. On the top is how men rate women. And you
have almost a perfect curve.
It's a perfect bell curve. Like you would expect attractiveness to follow a normal distribution because it does. And you can see that men rate most women in the middle, and then you go on either side and it drops off almost perfectly along the lines of a bell curve.
So what they're saying is most women men think are average, few women men think are ugly, few women men think are attractive. That's kind of the regular population. We'd all agree.
Yeah, that's just how it works.
Okay, now let's flip it. How do women rate men?
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 4, 6. All right, so there's seven bars, right? Women put men in the bottom two bars, 58% of them.
So basically saying that almost 60% of men are just ugly.
Are the least attractive or the next two least attractive. Only 12% of men get a 3 out of 7. Only 12% of men get a 3 out of 7. 5% of men get a 4 out of 7. 2% of men get a 6 out of 7. 0% get a 7 out of 7. Whereas with men gave 6% of women a 7 out of 7.
But basically what you're explaining is why dating is difficult, and you know, an ideal graph, it would be equal distribution, and those people within each bar would be meeting each other.
Right. So the way I interpret this is like, one, men are rating women pretty fairly here. Women are rating men entirely unfairly. And that makes it really difficult for men because if every single girl that they're trying to match with online sees them as like a 1 or a 2, how are they ever going to be able to get a date?
All right, let's move on. I want to get out of this. I want to get out of this isolation. But basically, you're saying it is so. Actually, on that note, why is masculinity disappearing in causes, which is kind of our next thing here? I have that women actually tend to be attracted to more feminine facial features. So women tend to like actually less masculine men. And the argument would be that they see them as safer and more comforting than very masculine men. And also, I think it first appeared in 2015. I actually looked up when this word first came up, but I looked it up and freaking forgot the year. But I think it was 2015. The word dad bod, and the rise. Women are actually attracted to the dad bod.
Which is going to be like not fat, but like not
No, it's
skinny.
it's like very little shoulder, chest, and arm mass, and just soft in the middle. It's just
Yeah.
it's just somebody who doesn't work out, who just isn't physically active.
But also not like fat.
No,
And like
you're not fat,
unkempt.
just soft in the middle, and not really solid anywhere else. And women are attracted to this. So not that that's masculine and not that it's feminine, but it's not masculine, you know. But yeah, I think that my thought on why masculinity is disappearing is one, the cultures, we just talked about this, the need for masculinity, the need for strength, the need for aggression. Like, what do we need aggression for unless it's sports or war?
Well,
Okay, which is, there's very few of the population playing sports at a high level, where you don't really need much aggression in like billiards or darts or
no, I mean,
something.
I would say there's certain jobs where it helps, like if you're aggressive with sales, but like aggressive in terms of pursuing your leads, I guess. Like, or
Yeah. And then economy, men typically aren't the breadwinner. So not typically they
no,
aren't.
I mean they still are,
Typically they are, but
but it's shifted
less.
like drastically in the last 20, 50 years.
Yeah, so there's no on the man, reliance on the man. Social media, um, it's not, I don't think, very masculine to be kind of posting yourself all the time. But we typically see a lot more femininity on social media.
Well,
And with the cameras constantly being on, no misdeed goes unpunished. And a certain element of masculinity is like kind of making mistakes and like just not giving a fuck, and experimenting,
well,
and
and risk taking is like
well,
men.
that's where I was
Men are
going with
often
this.
just encouraged to take risks.
So yeah, but when the camera's always on and every misdeed and every deed is being recorded, you take fewer risks.
Well,
And if masculinity, if one of the definitions of masculinity is risk taking, then there's just a hell of a lot less risk taking.
well,
And
I
a
feel like
fewer.
it's actually more like you're put in a no-win situation where like the expectation is that men are willing to take risks, but at the same time, like you get punished hard when you take a risk. And so men are like, okay, so I'm not going to take the risk and I'll come off as a wimp, or like I'll take the risk and you guys like are all going to criticize me afterwards for taking the risk. So like, how can I win here?
I'll give you another one about being the sole provider or the main breadwinner, is that when you typically are the main breadwinner, you get away with a lot more because
Well, because the woman relies on you. It's
you
an
got to
unequal
deal with it.
power dynamic.
Yeah, you got to deal with it. Same thing in the workplace. Like if you're in the workplace and you slap somebody on the ass, like that's bad. But like if that employer really needs you, they're like, well, what else are we gonna do? Have to deal with it. Not anymore. Not
Yeah,
anymore. And
I mean,
now, especially with the rise
I
of
would
Me
say
Too.
like it's a good thing that the days where you could slap a female employee on the ass and call her toots are gone.
I agree with you, but we're talking about causes and why it's disappearing, and I think that, I mean, I just think if you don't have to rely on the men, you can get rid of them more easily, and there's
You know,
no positivity in slapping somebody in the ass like that.
do you
So,
know what year it was that women were able to legally open checking accounts for themselves without being married?
oh, good question. Somewhere in the 70s, maybe.
1973.
Yeah, all right. I was
That's
thinking,
wild, isn't it?
I was going to say 72, and then I was like,
You're not,
yeah. I
and
believe it though. It's what, when you think back, like it's only a few years before we were born. Like,
yeah, I know, but like so like women are looking at this as like, yo, we can do all these things for ourselves, which I would say is a good thing. But they're also saying like, now that we can do all these things for ourselves, what do we really need men for? Like,
All right. Speaking of what you need men for, this week I've got the answer to last week's bar trivia question, and the last week's bar trivia question was: based on the laws of the U.S. Constitution, there are 5 requirements a person must meet in order to become the president of the United States. That candidate must be at least 35 years old. They must be a citizen of the United States. They must have resided in the U.S. for at least 14 years. And they must have been born also in the United States. There's one more requirement. What is
I'm
it?
gonna guess that they're alive.
No, that's not. That's not that's not based off the U.S. Constitution. But I guess yes, they would have to be alive. The last requirement to be president of the United States, the 5th and last requirement to be president of the United States, is that you must be elected. Which actually might be challenged.
Yeah, that might not be a requirement for too much longer. We'll see.
Stay tuned to the end of this episode for this week's bar trivia question. This is a good one. It's a little mathy, but it's an easy one if you can think outside the box just a little bit. I want to remind you, if you're watching this podcast, you can levy your opinion. You can join us and share with us what you think. Call 212-239-1839. You must be listening live Thursday night. 212-239-1839. That number's on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, or Instagram. All right, what do we got?
We could talk about like where gender roles really came from.
Okay, yeah. You're talking about like evolutionary biology?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you think back 10,000 years, right? And you had like hunter-gatherer societies. So there's a couple factors at play. The first one is like women to a small society, let's say, a village of like 100, 150 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Women are way more valuable to the survival of that village than men are.
Well, you could theoretically get away with 1, 2, 3 men.
That's my point. Is women can only pop out a baby so often, whereas like men can impregnate women at a pretty rapid clip.
So a woman can get pregnant once every year or
9
so.
months or so, yeah.
A man can get women pregnant several times a day. Just when you think about it. So you don't need as many men.
Yeah, and so because women were more vital to like the village continuing to succeed, they were protected more. So
Also, yeah, as a pregnant woman, you need protection. You can't be running and climbing trees and things like that.
yeah,
when
but
you're
even a
8, 9 months
non-pregnant woman
pregnant.
is still valuable because she has the potential to become pregnant at some point in the future. And so, like, sure, pregnant women are vulnerable. Women that are taking care of young children are vulnerable. And so you had men who were, one, mostly expendable, and two, like physiologically, like men are stronger than women
Right.
on average.
Testosterone, muscle mass, yeah.
And so you had men doing all the dangerous things like hunting and protecting against like another tribe invading the village or something
You had
like
the
that.
expendable gender doing dangerous things.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
And so that kind of got ingrained into society because 10,000 years ago it made a lot of sense. And for a lot of the last 10,000 years it still made a lot of sense. But in the last 100 years especially, when women are no longer all that vulnerable and we don't really have to worry about like society collapsing if like too many women die because we got 8 billion people in the world, so we don't have to worry about like a population crisis. Like, I know we did the episode 3 weeks ago, but whatever. It's so like women no longer have this kind of cherished role in society of like they must be protected and men must sacrifice themselves for them. And women have also been able to step into more dangerous roles or just non-dangerous roles of actually going to work. Because if you were to look at like what percentage of women were in the workforce 100 years ago versus today, it's a huge change.
Yes, yeah. Of course, there's still certain roles that trend masculine.
Sure, but like there are very few roles that only men can do. Virtually none, really.
No, but there are things like logging and construction and things that are just tend to be more
Right, and
masculine.
like combat soldier. Like women can do that, but very few do.
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of getting off of
But
what.
basically, for a very long time, there was a legitimate societal reason to have gender roles where men did one thing and women did the other, because economically and biologically it made sense. But in the last 100 years or so, it doesn't. But because it has such a long history in just human development, it got ingrained into a lot of religions and a lot of laws. And so like you can look at the United States, we were founded by the Puritans. Like we've got deep puritanical religious roots that strongly appeal to tradition and like biblical teachings, and the Bible was written 2000 years ago when a lot of the stuff from 10,000 years ago was still very true and doesn't really apply in the same way today. But you've got a lot of people that appeal to it and say like, yeah, it's always been that way, therefore it should always continue to be that way. And you're seeing a societal rejection of that, which I would agree with, but it
Well,
has
yeah, I mean,
consequences.
I think for the most part, you and I are actually in agreement. I think, uh, I mean, I don't think either one of us thinks that all nurses should be women and all construction workers should be men. Like I
No.
don't think there's many people actually that would think that way at all. I'm trying to think of maybe some more nuanced arguments I'm missing, but um, I think we agree there. Let's keep moving here.
Well, and you've also got just like one of the kind of founding principles of like conservative thought is like the necessity and of existence of hierarchies where
The necessity of hierarchy. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, like where hierarchies exist, and not only do they exist, they're necessary to exist for society to function. Now, I reject that, but if you're conservative, like the hierarchy for the last 10,000 years, less the last 50 or so, has been that men are above women. That's just how it's been.
Men are above women.
Yes.
Just
Like,
yeah, men are first there.
I mean, 100, it was only 100 years ago that women even got the right to vote in this country.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, like for a very long time, men were just higher than women in society, and like from a conservative role, that's a hierarchy: men, then women. And so, like a lot of conservative thought on this is like it should still be that way.
But okay, but what else has changed about masculinity lately? You've had this non-binary gender
I don't think that's
movement.
really at play.
Well, but it's neither masculine nor feminine, which is actually also not that common. But I'm seeing more of it actually. The last year or so, I've seen more of it than when it was more in the news a year and a half, 2 years ago. But I'm seeing a lot more kind of general neutral looking people lately.
You're
But
also in New York.
yeah, I know exactly. But I wasn't seeing it 2 years ago. So now I'm seeing it a little more often. But I do also see, like the quintessential like Williamsburg, not yuppie. What are they called now?
Hipsters.
Hipsters, yeah. Which is a man with bracelets on and a ponytail, like not particularly masculine, although in some cases oddly masculine looking, but very feminine sounding and behaving, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't. But it also,
But I
but
mean, you
also
got a
like a
guy
lot
that
of
looks.
things that no. I'm not saying what you're saying doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is that like there's a lot of things that hipsters do that don't make sense.
I mean, you just got a guy that looks like a lumberjack that's sipping boba tea.
Right.
It's like, all
And,
right, bro.
like
You never chopped a log in
yeah, or
your
like
life.
riding a penny farthing to like the
Yes.
like
So you don't know what penny farthing is. It's a type of bicycle with a big
A
front wheel
giant front wheel.
and a little back wheel.
Yeah, and like bringing like a typewriter to the coffee shop instead of a laptop. Why? Because they just want attention. That's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, it's just funny. But one of my notes, just because now feels like the right time to add it, and I don't know where else to do that, is the average sperm count in 1970 was 99 million sperm per milliliter, versus today it's 47 million sperm count per milliliter,
So
which
roughly
is
half.
which is less than half. It's less than half. So sperm count has gone down, and testosterone levels have gone down. So, what's causing that, and are we seeing that play out in the manner that we're kind of discussing just now, where you have the men that just don't look as masculine, men that don't do testosterone or driven jobs, and the cause, what we hear the causes are, and I think this is wildly speculation, but I also think it's more likely true than not: processed foods, pesticides, microplastics, and other endocrine disruptors, which I don't really know much about that science,
I
but
mean,
I think it's very likely.
there's no real answer yet. Like all of those are potential causes, but there isn't any real strong proof on any of those yet. Like the phenomenon is real, but the causes are still very questionable.
Yeah, but I mean, I think
It's probably a confluence of all those factors and then some.
yeah, that's definitely what I think. Okay, so your next topic here is, or segue here is what do we do? What can we do? Um, but I think that requires us to define this as like a negative.
Well,
And look, this part of me is like totally okay if like most guys want to be more girly. Like be as girly as you want. I don't give a shit.
well,
It's just,
well,
uh,
you're mixing up the questions here, because the first question is like, should men still like conform to the kind of traditional gender roles and like behavioral expectations that have existed for a while? And the second question is like, is there a real problem with the way that men are feeling about their place in society right now, and what can we do to help people? Like going back to Stanislav, I think like the best point he made is that a lot of men feel a lack of direction right now, and like what can we do to help men find more meaning and direction in their own lives and more motivation to engage with society at a more meaningful level?
yeah, well,
And the answer to the first question is like, I think people should be free to choose what kind of personality they want to embrace. And the second question is like, there's lots of shit that we can do to help men do better in society.
well, look at countries like Finland and Sweden, where they really tried to. They're seen as leaders in gender equality,
Mhm.
and they've offered things like paternity, equal matched, paternity leave, for paid paternity leave for men, and things like that. But then they saw this actually unexpected thing where women trended towards more women dominant industries, and men trended towards more male dominant industries. So you ended up with even more women in healthcare and teaching, and even more men in construction and just other
Is there
leadership
a theory
roles.
as to why that happened?
Uh, there's not. They're actually a little bit perplexed by it.
Because
Uh,
I am too.
but it's just kind of what happened. But they were doing everything, and they still are, to just kind of level the playing field, and just men and women seem to be inclined to follow these roles.
Well,
So
so here's one suggestion that I have, and this is not an original idea, but you can look at like some of the roles, especially early on in life. Like boys need role models, and sure they are likely to have their father, but not always.
no,
Um,
they're considerably less likely to have a father figure these days.
but um, you need more than just a father figure. You need other male role models, and so if if 60, 70, 80, 90% of like early childhood education roles are going to women, that's a role model that young boys don't have. And like, so you need to incentivize more men to get into like teaching roles and role model roles. And also, I'm going to say the same thing about like psychology, psychiatry, and therapy is like when 70 to 75% of the field is women, then men are going to struggle to find support and help when they have a condition. So you need, like, just like we properly took steps to try and incentivize women to go into like STEM roles and study things like physics and chemistry and computer science, and created all sorts of like scholarships and stuff for women to enter roles that were traditionally very male dominated. We need to be doing the same thing, but for men, and in roles like education and psychology to help.
Well, I wonder how you would. I mean, I guess I could see how you
You
would
do it
do
the
that.
same way you did it with STEM, where you create scholarships, you create opportunities for men to enter those fields.
But that also creates an uneven playing field, and
Yeah,
I
but
don't
we
know.
were okay making an unequal playing field for women to get into STEM because the goal was worth that cost.
Well, but now I mean, you're seeing pushback on things like affirmative action, right? And I think I don't know. That we're opening. I'm entertaining a different can of worms here.
Yeah, it's
Taking that
not about
conversation
affirmative
sideways.
action.
No, it's not. I'm not saying it's about affirmative action, but what I'm saying is affirmative action basically unleveled the playing field, and now we're getting a lot of pushback on. I mean, we already saw it overturned. So
Yeah, but
but when you incentivize
the
things
problem
one
when you bring in
way,
like affirmative action is that you bring in the concept of racism, which like just muddies this
well, now,
entire.
but we're talking about sexism, and that's why I said it's a can of
Yeah,
worms. I don't want to get into that topic.
no,
I don't
neither
even
do I.
my mind. I have no thoughts on that right now. I'm just throwing it out there just to be an asshole, devil's advocate.
But the way I look at it is like if we were willing to put money towards projects to get women into STEM fields, right? That
Hmm.
favored women by design because we identified a problem of not enough women were participating in these areas. So we are now identifying a problem of not enough men participating in a different area. So if we could do one thing for women, which was a good idea, we can do a very similar thing for men, and it would also be a good idea.
Yeah. Look. I think what can we do in response to all this is a really is very convoluted. Okay, because we're looking for a role that men need to fill in a society where they're not as needed anymore, um, and giving men direction. Giving men direction to be a first grade teacher. I don't think that really is a unique role for a man. Um, so I don't necessarily know that that's going to solve everything. I
No,
understand it's going to put some more male role models in there for
I'm
younger
not saying that
men,
there's any one single thing that's going to fix this. There's a suite of things that we could do, and each one of those steps will make a small but measurable difference.
but I think that's also kind of this gender fluidity argument these days is just that there's not much of a difference between men and women these days, except for their genitalia. Testosterone levels and things like that can be affected with medication. But realistically, we're not that different. And the role of a man in the year 2025 uh, is not that vastly different than the role of a female. It's just not giving birth really, but they can both occupy the same roles in day to day society.
Yeah, with very few exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying really hard to think of it, lifting heavy things or something like that. Like what? Yeah, so we're in a weird place as a society, um, and I definitely think that men are just way less masculine now than they ever have been before, and
And I think there's good and bad about that
I
because
happen to like masculinity, but we talked earlier about like slapping a woman on the ass in the office and calling her sugar tits. Like that's not a good masculinity. I don't
no,
even know if I could. That's more, assholeness than masculinity.
no, but there
But
was a time in society where that like was pretty normal.
I know I watched the Mad Men series a couple of times. you know, oh man.
And you know what? Like even today, like talk to any woman you know that that has worked and ask her how many times she's been sexually harassed while working.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. What else do we have on this? You got some links in
Well,
here. Anything that we should visit before? Because I don't really know what. I
like
don't feel like we made any progress in any solution. Or I just think we're just kind of
well,
bringing it to the light of
like
day.
I think another solution is like you can look at like, and this is on a broader societal level, like income inequality is a huge problem. And so like if you've got, and this doesn't apply solely to men, but you've got so many people right now that are working full time, and after paying for rent and food and like cell phone and car insurance and stuff, they've got basically nothing left at the end of the month, right? And so like people need to have some kind of a goal that they can feel that they're making progress towards. And if at the end of every month you feel like you're in the exact same position that you were at the beginning of the month, you're just a month older, then it's really easy to just lose motivation and say, I'm not gonna, like, why am I gonna try and like do better when anytime I take a step I don't make any progress? And like if you were to find ways to address the income inequality and make it so that the lower earners in this society are able to get ahead a little bit more, like you might start to see some of like, especially like the deaths of despair in like substance abuse and suicides and depression and anxiety. I think a lot of that is driven by bad economic conditions where you've got some people that are worth more money than they can ever spend in their entire lives, even if they tried.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. And
And then you've got other people that are struggling to make rent every month.
I'm
Like
gonna hit.
that's not a
I'm gonna.
functioning society.
I'm gonna hit the bar trivia question for episode 283. Sip Talk episode 283 bar trivia question. An old Arab who's about to die informs his 3 sons that he will leave them his camels. To the eldest son, he leaves half his camels. To his second son, he leaves 1/3 of them. To his youngest son, he leaves 1/9. After the old man died, the 3 sons went to get their camels, but discovered there were 17 animals. They did not want to sell or kill any of the camels. And all they could think of, let's see, and they could not, I'm sorry, it's not 17 animals, 17 camels. Sorry. So 17 camels in total. They did not want to sell or kill any of the camels, but they could not think of a way to divide the camels. Wow, what is wrong with my spoken English here? Just then, Abdullah came riding along on his camel, listened to their problem. Immediately, Abdullah thought of a way to divide the camels just as the old man had wished. What was his solution? So there's 3 sons. Eldest gets half the camels. Second son gets 1/3 of them. Third son gets 1/9. He dies. The 3 sons find out there are 17 camels. Abdullah rides up on his camel and comes up with the answer just like that.
I've got it.
What did Abdullah see? Maybe from being so high up that the brothers just didn't have. So
I'll give you the answer off the air.
All right, I hope so. Don't forget it. Man, I just can't speak. Don't forget it. Don't forget to visit SipTalkPodcast.com where you can buy us a drink because we like drinks.
And some chemicals.
Yes, some chemicals. We'll imbibe with some chemicals. You can answer the camel question under the bar trivia question at SipTalkPodcast.com. I want to thank you guys for joining. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We need you guys to subscribe. I don't even care if you listen. The subscriber numbers just help the podcast out. I do like that you listen or watch. So you got YouTube or you've got Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you can listen to podcasts, and find us on YouTube. SipTalkPodcast.com, and thank Rosh Galeb for feeding us your Instagram comments live. On that note, thank you for joining. Justin DiGiulio for James Boswell saying adios.
New York City real estate agents, it's time to make the move. Keep 100% of your commission. Get access to hands-on agent support and New York City's best agent training, the Slingshot program. Online access to our Agent University and online on-demand video training program. All at DiGiulio. Contact info@DiGiulioGroup.com to make the move.